Terrence Crawford retiring from boxing is bad for the sport.
This is McTruck, aka This is McTruck, aka
This isn't the highlight show. It's the real conversations. Welcome to the MacTruck Podcast. My name is Mack, talking sports, culture, competition, the way the real fans actually do. Facts, context, and real takes. Let's run it. Today, we're talking boxing. We're talking UFC Fight Night, Manel Kape versus Brandon Royval, and the unfortunateness that is the Brown University shooting. I'd like to thank you guys for joining me here week before Christmas, and it's like 50-something degrees here in Michigan for no absolute reason. Can't seem to figure out why, but I'm not going to complain because I hate the damn cold. But let's hop into it. As you guys know, Terrence Bud Crawford announced his retirement this past week via Instagram. For those of you who don't know, Terrence Crawford is 42-0. Very high up there on the boxing upper echelon list of greats. Many consider him a GOAT. 5 different world championship belts in 5 different weight classes. Retires at 38 years old. And as he placed his retirement out there in the social media waves and everything, he left us with this quote: "I'm stepping away from competition, not because I'm done fighting, but because I've won a different battle. The one where you walk away on your own terms." And this was via YouTube, by the way. "This isn't goodbye. This isn't the end of one fight. It's the beginning of another." End quote. Now, for those of you who also kind of remember, a couple weeks ago, we talked about the real unfortunateness and greediness of one of the previous boxing federations he was a part of. Okay. This man got his boxing titles stripped from the WBC because, in a nutshell, the WBC has been greedy because they wanted him to pay some damn $300K worth of sanction fees. The other 4 sanctioning bodies of boxing alone don't even add up to $300K collectively. And he did, go out on Front Street with a video reply to the president and CEO of the WBC, basically stating, "You think you're better than everybody, so you deserve more? Is that it?" And then that's just not how things are going to go down. At this point, Terrence Crawford doesn't have anything to prove. He literally doesn't. I would say, if anything, if anybody wants to try to nitpick, I would say the only thing that he could probably chase is trying to beat Floyd Mayweather's record, of 50-0. Like I said, Terrence Bud Crawford is retiring at 42-0, unblemished, undefeated, unbeaten. Okay? Terrence Crawford won the WBC undisputed super middleweight and super welterweight championships recently. He won the undisputed super middleweight championship, beating Errol Spence handily. If you guys remember that fight, he dog walked him, and it wasn't competitive. In Errol Spence's case, wasn't competitive. In fact, beat him by knockout in 2023. Then got the undisputed junior welterweight championship when he stopped Julius Ndongo in 2027. Just to kind of give you a perspective of what this man does. He's a home product of Omaha, Nebraska, which is right here in the Midwest. For those of you who don't know, Midwestern boy, all things Omaha, all things Nebraska, all things Cornhusker. And let's just to put this out here as well, Terrence Crawford holds 18 world titles, literally across 5 different weight classes: lightweight, junior welterweight, normal welterweight, junior middleweight, and super middleweight. He's also ESPN's #1 pound-for-pound fighter of boxing for 2025, and literally tops it at #1 out of 100 fighters. Okay? And this is why I feel Terrence Crawford leaving the sport of boxing is a bad thing. Because we've not seen a dominance like this since Floyd Mayweather in terms of the men's division. Let's just throw that out there. It's been a long time since we've seen something like this. Some people are going to try to argue, oh, Mike Tyson, oh, George Foreman. Yeah, in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. Floyd Mayweather, Pretty Boy Floyd, then Money Mayweather, stepped in, did his thing, 50-0. Terrence Crawford has done the exact same thing while being in the shadows. And I can't really say shadows, but laying low in terms of putting in the work, putting in the time, putting in the effort to show people that, it don't matter if you're undersized. It don't matter if you're a smaller fighter in some of these weight classes. You work hard, you fight hard, you get to play hard. Terrence Crawford has done nothing but that and unblemished. And 90% of those didn't even need to go to a decision. Now, I will also say, though, in a nutshell, I think him retiring from the sport is also a good thing because we kind of go into a new era of boxing in terms of the speculation side of the sport where people never really kind of explored until, recently within the past couple of years. And specifically enough, this fight that happens tonight, it's Friday night, okay? As we're talking to you here, Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua, who has one of the best boxing resumes, former two-time heavyweight champion, 28-4-0, 25 knockouts. Jake Paul, former Disney Channel star, got his claim to fame before boxing. Got his claim to fame from YouTube, from Disney, being a young child actor. He's 12-1-0 rather. And to be quite honest, I can't really say that I'm super mad at Jake Paul for how he's kind of turned his life around. If anybody has watched the documentary of his on Netflix called Problem Child, he really digs deep into how boxing saved his life and why he needed to get into something that was constructive, that was, keeping his mind right. A little bit of a portion, I don't want to spoil it for those who haven't taken the time to look, taken time to watch. Him and his older brother, Logan, for a good while did not get along. Logan was kind of a bully. And unfortunately, people can see that with the job that he does in terms of being a wrestler. And there's sometimes nothing wrong with that as an older sibling. I have 4 of them. I understand. But kind of as a troubled kid for Jake, he kind of struggled trying to fit in, struggled always feeling like he was in his brother's shadow. And personally, I think Jake Paul is a better boxer than his brother. Now, the way Jake Paul kind of built his boxing resume is obviously a lot more unorthodox than most boxers. Jake Paul has built his uncanny boxing resume, fighting former MMA stars, former old boxers, things like that. He's fought Tommy Fury and lost. He fought Mike Tyson and won. And I think really the Mike Tyson fight was more of a speculation and was an actual boxing match. Mike Tyson, okay, 53-year-old, former heavyweight champion, former dominance in the realm of boxing. We all know this. These are things that we don't need to explain unless you're not familiar with the sport of boxing and have never heard of Mike Tyson's name. Okay, he's fought the likes of Ben Askren. He's fought the likes of so many other former champions in other sports. But outside of Tommy Fury, who's, mind you, still active on the active boxing roster, Anthony Joshua is his next test. Frankly, Anthony Joshua, if this fight is not actually rigged like a lot of us are going to think it is because this is Jake Paul fighting Anthony Joshua, Anthony Joshua should handle him in about 3 or 4 rounds if they're actually boxing to box. Jake Paul even admitted it himself. If the fight's not rigged, Anthony Joshua is handing me my ass on a silver platter. In not so many words. But the one thing I think I'm more or less looking forward to just in terms of the realm of boxing and the importance of this fight is if Jake Paul actually fares better than the overall field thinks. And I'm not necessarily talking about faring better in terms of getting a win over Anthony Joshua. I'm talking if he looks like he can handle a punch from a heavyweight, if he looks like he can move with the extra weight. Jake Paul weighed in at 216.6 pounds, and he's about 6'2", 6'3". Anthony Joshua is 6'8", 6'9", and weighed in at 243 pounds, and that man is damn near solid muscle. Obviously, looks can be deceiving. It's all about how you put together your combinations, how you get your shots off in the middle of somebody's defense. Everybody knows the sweet science if you're specifically talking about boxing. But I think the thing with this fight is, again, if Jake Paul can handle himself decently at the least in this heavyweight matchup, I don't think there's any reason why Jake Paul doesn't enter himself into the professionally active circuit of boxing. Because at this point, let's say he loses by decision to Anthony Joshua in this fight tonight, and he's still, his power numbers are up, his jab numbers are up, his efficiency is up in some way, shape, or form. There's nothing else to prove outside of the fact that you now should probably try to earn your ranking, like your actual ranking in professional boxing. And I've been getting a lot of flack for this, and I frankly don't give a damn. But Jake Paul, the boxer, not as bad and not as terrible as people think. Jake Paul, the entertainer, obviously, everybody has their views and woes about it. But in order to sell a fight, you have to entertain. Part of sports is the entertainment value or section of said sport. It's not just how you perform the athletic ability. While that is obviously the main aspect of sport, is to perform the athletic task to the best of your ability. In order to do that, in order to get paid as a professional athlete, you got to be entertaining in some way. You got to be that stick or that draw. You got to have that it factor that makes people want to tune in. And because of Jake Paul's past, in terms of him being a YouTuber, him being brash, him being all of this, that's what's drawing people in terms of people that are just now being, beaming in, rather, being speculating, watching the sport of boxing from an entertainment value. People that are coming in and watching it for the athletic and sport value are probably more or less boxing fans, former fighters, former boxers, Anthony Joshua fans that are coming to see, what kind of challenge could Jake Paul actually present to the former two-time heavyweight champion. In the other words, Anthony Joshua has also stated this is kind of, in a nutshell, coining it to be a resurgence of Anthony Joshua, the boxer, Anthony Joshua, the heavyweight fighter, Anthony Joshua, the former champion, looking to reestablish himself in the heavyweight division. This is a fully sanctioned fight, so it goes on both of their records, whether Anthony Joshua wins or whether Jake Paul wins. Either way, this fight is going on their record. So this is not just, it's not just speculation. It's a sanctioned fight. And I need people to understand that. I need people to really realize that Jake Paul is also obviously the betting underdog in this fight, which is surprising and not surprising at the same time, just considering how he's been able to build his resume. But at the same time, there's no way in hell you can make Anthony Joshua the underdog for this fight. There's no way. This is the this is the main event for this card. The co-main event features Alicia Baumgartner and Layla Budin, who, frankly, I don't understand how neither one of these ladies have not gotten a headliner on a card like this yet. What Jake Paul has done for women's boxing in its entirety since he started MVP promotions is nuts to me. Alicia Baumgartner and Layla Budin are fighting for the unified super featherweight championship of the world. Alicia Baumgartner comes into this as the betting favorite. She is 16-1-0 with 7 knockouts. Layla Budin is 13-1-0 with 2 knockouts on her record. And this fight card even gets better because we have 2 former UFC champions boxing each other on this fight card as well. And frankly, I can't wait. I can't wait to see just as the entirety of this card. By the time you guys listen to this portion of the show, this episode, whatever you want to call it, it'll probably be the weekend, probably Monday, when we're gearing up to go over the results for everything else in terms of college football, NFL football, and the results of this specific boxing match. The card itself starts here at about 32 minutes Eastern Standard Time. So 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central Time. Okay. Again, also on this card, Anderson Silva versus Tyron Woodley. Anderson Silva, boxing record 3-2 with 2 KOs. In MMA, obviously one of the best MMA fighters to ever grace the octagon. Some consider him the GOAT. Some consider him a GOAT. Some put him on Mount Rushmore. I am one of those some who put him on the Mount Rushmore of greatest MMA fighters to grace the octagon. 34-11 with 22 KOs in the sport of MMA. And obviously, we all know him as the longest reigning middleweight champion of the UFC. Moving on to Tyron Woodley, unfortunately, he is 0-2 in boxing. He's 19-7-1 in MMA. Former UFC welterweight champion. Obviously, we know how he got his reign to become that UFC champion spot. Has 7 knockouts as well. And like I said, I personally cannot wait to see this fight card. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be wild. It's going to be off the chain. And I think it's one of the best ways to end 2025 in terms of our pugilistic sports. You know, Christmas is coming next week. We're gearing up for the end of the year and getting ready to kick off a brand new badass year in 2026. 2025 has been rough for a lot of people, whether you're considered a quote unquote normal person or whether you're considered, you know, one of the best athletes out here on planet Earth. Fact of the matter is, this boxing card is going to be one talked about for the ages. Jake Paul was already out here talking about how he's going to become the biggest upset in boxing history and knock out Anthony Joshua. That's not actually going to happen. I'm going to tell you that right now. And if it does actually happen, it's rigged. Because ain't no way Anthony Joshua gets knocked out by Jake Paul. The math just doesn't math. And listen, and big shout out to In My Bag Apparel and Customs for always holding us down, whether you're in the game, at the gym, or just watching from the couch. In My Bag fits the lifestyle. Check them out at InMyBag_2023 on Instagram, the TikTok shop, BigCartel.com, and the Whatnot app for all things Mack Truck merchandise and all things lifestyle apparel. All right, now, we're moving into a new topic, same energy, new topic. Let's get it. UFC Fight Night, Brandon Royval versus Manel Kape at the UFC Apex this past weekend. This fight card was also fire. Again, for those of you who are following pugilistic sports, specifically MMA, we've talked about it ad nauseum. We're going to keep talking about it until it happens. But this was the very last ESPN UFC event to air on ESPN because the UFC has now partnered with Paramount Plus, and all of their events, whether number card, whether fight night, whether jiu-jitsu matches, combat, karate, things like that, are moving to the Paramount Plus platform. With any subscription that you have with Paramount Plus, you will have access to the UFC events as well. But to start off, the recap for UFC Fight Night, Royval versus Manel Kape in a catchweight, King Bobby Green versus Lance Gibson Jr. in a catchweight at 160. King Green ends up winning this by split decision. He is now 33-7-1. Lance Gibson Jr., who's just now getting his feet wet in the UFC, is 9-2-0. Split decision again, 29-28 times 2 and 28-29 again in favor of King Green. And I will tell you this, I am starting to get back into some of these content groups as far as like sports are concerned. And for whatever reason, people seem to think that King Green is washed up. Yeah, he may be, starting to creep on the age of 40, but he held his own against Paddy Pimblett until he got knocked out. Bobby Green King Green has built his resume on, again, being an underdog and, again, being kind of that loudmouth fill-in. But that's, again, what draws people to buy these fights, to buy the merchandise and things, because it's not just the athletic portion of the sport. It's the entertainment. How entertaining can you be while performing the athletic task? And adding a Lance Gibson Jr., who essentially, in my humble opinion and aspect, Lance Gibson Jr. gives off a lot of younger King Bobby Green. I'll just tell you that right now. Gives it off a little bit. And I apologize, I'm still getting over a head cold, so everything sounds a little weird. But we're still here talking sports. I'm still going over this fight card. Next in the heavyweight division, Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Marcus Buchecha. And this was a majority draw across the board. Split. Kennedy Nzechukwu, 14-6-1. Marcus Buchecha, grappling extraordinaire, is 5-2-1 now with this draw. I watched this fight specifically because I am a heavyweight myself and I always want to try to learn. I always want to try to educate myself, and just because I'm a fan of the sport as well. I think that was probably one of the hardest fights to judge if I was in a judge's perspective for this fight specifically. I don't think either one of them did enough to lose, but I don't think either one of them did enough to win. I know there was a lot of chatter afterwards. I mean, obviously from both corners thinking, they did enough to get the win or the other person did enough to get a win. Obviously the judges saw it differently, but that's what happens in a sport where you have to essentially leave it up to the judges. But that's also why the old school saying is, don't leave it up to the refs, don't leave it up to the judges. Do enough, be active enough to get the win or knock them out or put the game so far out of reach that it's very hard for them to come back and make a comeback win. Moving on into the featherweight division, Melquazo Costa versus Morgan Charrier, featherweight division. This fight was also wild. Started out a little slow, but Mr. Costa, who's now 25-7-0, gets the TKO knockout with a spinning back elbow. If anybody knows the sport of MMA, you know how hard it is to throw things accurately sometimes when you have somebody that matches your energy or that is very similar to you in how you fight tempo-wise. Mr. Costa turned around and hit this spinning elbow so clean it was disgusting. I was just like, oh. I mean, because at 1 minute they were going back and forth in terms of standing control, double locks, kind of swinging each other off the fence, and then Manel Costa just turns around and ding, hits him square in the face, back elbow. Morgan Charrier of France is now 21-12-1, and frankly, I'm not surprised if these two end up doing it out again for a sequel. Moving on into the middleweight division, Cesar Almeida versus Cesario Olajaychuk. Unanimous decision to Cesario Olajaychuk. He is now 17-3-0. Cesar Almeida is now 7-2-0. And it was majority decision, unanimous decision, 27-30 times 3 across the board in favor of Cesar Olajaychuk. And I love the fact that we're kind of going over just its entirety of being able to, and at least for the past couple of years, just with the UFC, being able to end each year so far with bum-ass, numbered events, and then a fight night to close out the year. Moving on into the co-main event for UFC Fight Night, Brandon Royval versus Manel Kape. Giga Chikadze in the featherweight division versus Kevin Vallejos. Kevin gets the win via knockout, TKO, whatever you want to call it. He's now 17-1-0. Giga Chikadze is now 15-6-0. He also wins this fight with a spinning back fist. The first one was a kick to a spinning back elbow. This next one, TKO, KO, spinning back fist straight to the dome of Giga Chikadze. And ironically enough, I mean, and I understand the veteranism, the veteranship of like the reasoning why some of these older fighters and veteran fighters are getting the respect in terms of becoming, the betting favorite on some of these cards. But just because you have veteranship in a sport and you may have a good record in terms of, having a winning record or being over 500 doesn't necessarily mean you need to be considered a betting favorite unless the money is actually there proving that. For Kevin Vallejos, that wasn't the case. Now, and I can almost guarantee you, the next time he gets on a fight card of any kind, whether it's a fight night or whether he gets action and a prelim and a numbered event for the UFC, people will put money on him. This kid is electric. He came in with his head screwed on, ready to show the world, like, just because you have more experience in the UFC doesn't necessarily mean you gonna beat me. And that's, I think, the one thing I love personally is, like, these younger fighters are, while they're getting younger in terms of starting their professional careers in the UFC and MMA, they're coming in with their heads screwed on. They're coming in with a game plan. They're not just coming in trying to survive and then build. They're building to survive. They're building to make a name and fast. And I love it. Moving on into the main event for this fight night, Brandon Royval versus Manel Kape. Brandon Royval, not been in a hot streak, now 17-9-0 in the flyweight division versus Manel Kape. TKO KO in favor of Manel Kape due to punches. He is now 22-7-0. And now, look, listen, Manel Kape is a force to be reckoned with. I don't know why it has taken us as fans so long to realize the fact that just because you come from a smaller fight camp or a smaller division, whatever that looks like, that you can't be dominant. Manel Kape has proven for the past 3 or 4 fights now that he needs a title shot. And after this fight, after fighting somebody in a Brandon Royval, who has fought for the title about 3 times in the past 2 or 3 years, and to beat him by knockout, and accurately by knockout, mind you, there's no way you don't give this man a title shot. Like, I don't know how you don't see it. Like, I literally don't understand how you don't see it. Now, like I said, it was the last UFC event presented on ESPN. After 7 years of being on the ESPN platform again, UFC is transferring and moving over to the Paramount Plus platform. Again, like I said, with any subscription, you can get all things UFC through Paramount Plus. Just make sure you're getting a subscription. Make sure you're reading the fine print, okay? The Paramount Plus era of the UFC kicks off with UFC 324, Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett for the UFC World Lightweight title as the main event, and obviously the biggest co-main event right now in history. Kayla Harrison is going to defend her title versus one of the GOATs of MMA, one of the GOATs of women's MMA, and Amanda Nunes, who's coming out of retirement to try to get her belt back. And I'm not even going to lie to you, when they first announced this UFC 324 card, it was originally Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett for the interim lightweight title because Ilia Topuria, who was the unified champion, was stepping back. And now they've made it official. This is now for the UFC lightweight world title because Ilia Topuria has stepped back and stepped down from the title due to some legal things he is trying to work through in terms of just things with his wife. Obviously I don't need to go into details because it's all over the place. But as I said, when they originally put out this card, it was for the interim and the Kayla Harrison, Amanda Nunes fight. Still, and I still think this. Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes needs to be the damn headliner for this card. And it drives me absolutely nuts. Like, why? Like, there's not much of a draw for me. While I like Justin Gaethje and I like Paddy Pimblett, I'm more interested in Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes duking out for the bantamweight title. Why that's the co-main event still to me makes no damn sense whatsoever. DW, my guy. What's wrong with you? Like, why did you make that the co-main event? Like, there's no way that Paddy Pimblett versus Justin Gaethje gets more active draw than Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes. There's absolutely no way. And you can't sit there and say, oh, it's going to be pay-per-views. Ain't no more pay-per-view. Like, I guarantee you, if I put out a poll on the TheeMackTruck Sports Group, if I put out a poll on here, if I put out a poll somewhere else, which would you rather see as the main event? Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes for the Women's World Bantamweight Championship, or Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett for the Men's World Lightweight Championship? Which one would you rather see as the main event? And I can almost guarantee you, people are going to pick Amanda Nunes versus Kayla Harrison because that's what makes sense. Now, going back to Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett, Justin Gaethje has one of the biggest knockout records in the lightweight history. He's also, his nickname is the highlight for a reason. And obviously with Paddy the Batty Pimblett, it's a nickname and a personality in itself. There is draw there. But ain't no way in God's green hell earth, okay, that it's got more of a speculation draw than Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes. Ain't no way in hell that's a thing. Additionally, on the same card, again, this card to start out 2026 is a banger. Like I said, your main event is Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett for the lightweight title. The co-main event is Kayla Harrison versus the ever great Amanda Nunes for the bantamweight title. You also have Sean O'Malley, former bantamweight champion, versus former contender in Song Yadong, duking it out in a bantamweight bout. Then you have Juan Cortez Acosta versus Derek the Blackbeard Lewis in a heavyweight showdown. Like, what? Like, that's how you decide you're going to open up 2026. And then about a week and a half later, you have UFC 2020 or UFC 325 in the down under in Aussie land with Alexander Volkanovski fighting at home. So that's how you want to start our 2025. I am with it. So it's going to be great close out to 2025 in terms of the UFC. Great start up to 2026 in terms of the UFC. We've got boxing tonight, but unfortunately, I'm going to be real for a second. This last topic isn't easy. It's something that a lot of people, carry quietly, and it's something that I felt like was important to talk about. When I say that, I'm talking about the unfortunate shootings at Brown University. And again, everything that we've talked about, everything that we're speaking about, including this, you can find all the information on this topic on bbcnews.com. You can find everything sports related on numerous sports engines, ESPN.com, UFC.com, any of the boxing sites, things of that nature in terms of our fact checks and everything like that. But for those of you who have paid attention or have, seen the world news, December 13th, 2025 in Providence, Rhode Island, second day of final exams at Brown University, there was a mass shooting. 2 students were killed, 9 were injured. Police detained a potential suspect who was later released that Sunday. There's still currently no immediate threats on campus. All in-person exams and classes have been canceled for the rest of 2025. The 2 named students who lost their lives were Mohammed Aziz Numanikov and Ella Cook. We're going to give a moment of silence to those individuals and everybody that was injured in the shooting. Thank you for that. Additionally, the attack on Brown University brings the number of mass shootings in the United States for the year of 2025 to 389, and that's according to the Gun Violence Archive. And with that, guys, that's the buzzer on the MackTruck Pod. If you rock with it, like, share, subscribe, rate, and share it with somebody who really watches the game. Facts first, real takes. Stay tuned, stay sporty. Catch us on the next run.
This is Mack, aka